Hi guys, welcome back to No Notions Travel. I am here today as part of our Sunday series to do our episode on what it's like to travel as a trans person. I am here today with Mark Doyle Ward and Noah Halpin. It's great to have both of you on.
So my name is Mark Doyle Ward. My pronouns are he, him. I'm 23 years old and I live in Tuam in Galway. Yeah, I recently traveled to Madrid about 8 weeks ago for my top surgery, so that was very exciting.
Hi, my name is Noah Halpin. My pronouns are he, him. Who am I? I'm just Noah. I'm a trans guy I'm 29. I'm 30 next week, from North County Dublin. And yeah, I work a lot in the kind of trans healthcare area.
So guys, have you traveled much in the past? Are you really passionate with traveling, or?
I'm very, very lucky and privileged in that I have had the chance to travel extensively since I was very, very small. My dad kind of worked mainly out of Asia, so it would be the whole lot of us going a lot of the time. So from very young, we've been traveling the world, and maybe more in the latter years I got to go a little further afield. So where have I been? God, I've been to Hong Kong and China many times, Thailand, Vietnam, Australia a lot of times, New Zealand quite a lot of times, the US quite a bit. I've been to Spain, Italy, Germany, France, everywhere in the UK, Belgium. I can't think of them all. I've been a lot of places.
A lot.
You're kind of putting us to shame here, Noah. And how about you, Mark? Have you traveled much?
Well, when I was younger, I was lucky enough as well that I was able to go on holidays a couple of times a year. I've been to America, and I've been to Germany, I've been to Spain, I've been to Italy, I've been to Paris, I've been to Portugal, and honestly, I just have to say I love traveling. I have plans now within the next 12 months going to Canada. That's the aim.
Okay, cool. So far to both of you in your travels, has there been any countries in specific that have been kind of the most kind of friendly to trans people? Is there any country specifically that you'd kind of say this was a great country to visit, it was really accepting?
Personally, for me, when I was in Madrid there, I honestly, all I could see every so often was just pride flags, and everyone that I was talking to around the place that kind of knew why I was, say, in that hospital and stuff like that, everyone was just so nice. I couldn't recommend Spain more highly for being so inclusive and so open and friendly. I found it just so comforting. I loved Spain for that.
The countries that I found, now I don't know if it's because half my family live over in New Zealand, so I don't know if it's just because they all know me or something, but I found New Zealand super accepting. Never even people I didn't know that I told are trans, there was never any sort of negativity or anything like that. Quite the opposite. The same with Australia, even though I was kind of that little bit, I wasn't in a city most of the time. I actually lived in Australia, for a couple of years, but I traveled all around and I never really experienced any negativity there either. And Vietnam was actually deadly. Vietnam was really, really cool. I don't think I got misgendered once, even though I was pre-HRT and pre-surgery and everything. Yeah, they're the three my top three in terms of trans friendliness.
That's actually fascinating about Vietnam.
I've heard that about New Zealand quite a bit from a few trans people before. It's just a very much more destigmatized country from what everyone's interacting with in terms of masking or not masking. So yeah, I've heard that a couple of times.
They're very forward thinking. New Zealand are and their prime minister is just incredible as well. She's a hugely inclusive person. She runs the country really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, New Zealand, it's great crack. There's loads of great little kind of queer spaces there too.
So in planning travel, planning trips, and just in wanting to go to certain places, has any countries been kind of put lower on the list because there's a air of negativity in terms of being trans, and is there any countries in particular you guys have kind of avoided so far just because of that?
Well, there's countries not that I've avoided, but that I have had negative experiences in. So frightening experiences. I used to go to Dubai quite a lot. because, you know, when you're going to Asia or Australasia, it's good to do a 2-night stop in Dubai. It just breaks the really, really long trip up.
Yeah.
But then after I came out, the first time I went to Dubai after I started presenting mail, I wasn't on hormones or anything yet, but my passport had, you know, my male identity on it and everything like that. And I remember being absolutely terrified going into the country, because it was at the point where I'd just gotten my gender recognition certificate, but I hadn't swapped my name officially on lots of different things like my bank card and stuff like that. And it was to the point where going into the country, you know, the way there's that little zip in the lining of your suitcase. I
Yeah.
like put all my stuff with my previous name on it, like paperwork and cards and stuff in that. And then I was like, oh my God, does this look too suspicious if they find it? And, you know, I started kind of freaking out going into the country. It was fine going into the country, but, you know, the hotel that we stayed in, I remember being up sitting beside the pool, and these two guys, and I just knew they weren't guests of the hotel. I knew it by the clientele of the hotel and things like that they just weren't. And they
Yeah.
kept circling around me, just walking, pretending not to look at me, then asked me for a lighter, then kind of stood not far. And, you know, one of the guys who worked at the pool came over and said, I think you should go up to your room for a few minutes. He was a guy from the UK who worked in that hotel in Dubai. And I kind of took that as, okay, yeah. So I legged it up to my room, stayed there for 3 hours. And what I think it was, they might have been police. There was 2 trans women eating lunch in Dubai only the week before who were just taken from the table in their cafe and detained. And I don't know what happened to them since, but only kind of a week or 2 before that. So I thought that was a bit of a close call.
Yeah.
And then Poland is a little bit scary. So I went to Poland twice for my surgery and to accompany another friend. And, you know, I was probably more scared than I should have been. We only see certain things in our media here. Like we only see, you know, people being beaten up and things like that. But, you know, I do speak to trans friends over in the place I went, Warsaw, which is that little bit more kind of European and a little bit more open. And, you know, when I got there, we still had to be careful. There is nerves going through border control and things like that. I was in a gay bar there and told someone I was trans, and he even told me, don't say that in here. And I was like, but this is a gay bar. And he was like, yeah, but it's
Wow.
different. He was like, some people really won't be happy with you. So I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, it was just little things like that. I took off, I have a rainbow ring on my finger. I took that off going through into the country and things like that. So, but then again, you drive around and you see apartments that have rainbow flags hanging out their window in protest,
Yeah.
and things like that. But we did see like stickers on shop windows saying things like, you know, it's no, it was like a rainbow flag with the circle and
With the red
cross
red
kind of
yeah.
mark.
cross through it. Yeah, but then other shops that said, you know, this is an LGBT inclusive place. So
Okay.
it's very 50-50, but
Yeah.
they're the 2 countries I kind of didn't feel comfortable, and I'm not sure I'd go back to Dubai because every machine you go through is like a body scanner.
Yeah.
So anomalies will come up. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Wow. And how about yourself, Mark? Has it ever kind of prevented you from traveling somewhere or kind of put you off?
When I was younger, I was fortunate enough to be in the position to be able to go to Florida a few times, and I absolutely loved it so much. But in recent times, I've wanted to go, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to leave it another couple of years because
Okay,
it's
yeah.
just with the way things are kind of going the last few years. I was just like, as much and all as I'd love to like even like live over there for a few months or whatever, I'd be so terrified that if it ever came out that I was transgender, you know, in the kind of south of America, I don't know how I'd feel, if I'd be very comfortable or whatever. And also like I'd love to go visit like Eastern Europe, but at the same time I'd be a bit afraid again in case it ever did come out, like because at the moment I present like very masculine and stuff, but at the same time, you know, you just don't know when something might happen and it may end up coming out, and I don't know if I'd feel safe in places like that, you know.
Okay.
That would be really it. Like other places I'd just go anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you one country that did really surprise me, or not country, one place in a country that really
Yeah.
surprised me. in 2016, there's a thing called the Bingham Cup, which is generally called the Gay Rugby World Cup. So I've been playing rugby for many years, but I went over with the Irish team, the Emerald Warriors, to that one. And that year it was in Nashville, Tennessee. And I know a few of us were like, this is Bible Belt America holding
Yeah.
like the Gay Rugby World Cup. Like, I know a few of us were a bit nervous, but when we got there, like all of the locals were just so, and we went to Florida as well, Mark, by the way, at the same time, no issues. But everyone was just delighted to have us there. Like, got in taxis and the drivers were all like, oh, it's so good that you guys are over. Like, I hope you enjoy yourself here in Nashville. Like, all the accommodation staff and the food staff and everything. Like, it was great. It was great crack. There was no trouble, and we were parading. There's like 1,000 players that go to this event from all over the world. So there was thousands of gays like just wandering around the streets of Nashville, and everyone was so lovely to us. And then
Wow.
I took like a little holiday in Florida afterwards, and there was no problems. But like, I really did think, God, Bible Belt America, Nashville, Tennessee, like, ugh. But no, it was
Yeah.
great.
So their
Yeah.
Southern hospitality clearly trumps their Bible Beltness.
Yeah.
And say if there was somebody trans watching that is afraid to travel because they're afraid of, like, you know, going to a country and finding out the wrong way that it's not very supportive, would you have any advice for somebody that is kind of a bit nervous about traveling as a trans person?
What I would say is, obviously, of course, we have to think about safety a little bit more, but don't let that consume you. Don't let the fear consume you entirely. Like, of course, we have to keep vigilant and things like that. But what I've come to find is, some of the countries where you're told, oh, that's terrible for queer people there, ended up not being. Like, we have people so scared to step foot in Poland. I've never had an issue in Poland in my life. You know what I mean? Like, never any serious issue or anything like that. But I guess my advice would be, be vigilant, but don't let that fear totally turn you off somewhere, unless it's somewhere that is clearly extremely dangerous. And that it's not always what it seems from the media. Our media here like to focus on the worst bits of things from other countries. And if you actually talk to the people on the ground in those countries, they're saying, well, actually, that was just like one day of protest that, got a bit hairy. It's not really an everyday thing here. So, take little steps to protect yourself, make sure your documentation is in order, things like that. But I wouldn't allow it to, hamper your experience of traveling.
Yeah, I'd have to agree there. My main piece of advice would probably be do your research. Not just quick Google search, like actually see if you could actually, talk to somebody from those areas or somebody who's been to those places and kind of find out from the horse's mouth, more or less, whether it is safe or not,
Yeah.
But I'd say generally, try and give it a go if you can.
One thing I would add is the little things that you can do to make yourself that little bit more safe. Like for me, my Grindr profile, I turned off my location setting.
Okay.
I didn't delete the app. I just didn't want someone in the apartment block who might be homophobic to know that there's a gay 5 meters from them. Do you know what I mean? And my picture was up. So I didn't want that to be, just little kind of safety things like that make that little bit different. Now, one of my friends that I went with the first time, he kept all his location settings on. He had a multiple hookups while he was over there and never had an issue. So, I mean, it's sometimes it's not as bad as we're being told it is, but that's not belittling the experience of people who actually do really have it bad in those countries. There's different parts of, say, Poland that are much worse than others. But yeah, I just say little kind of things to keep yourself safe, but not overthink it too much.
How would you handle if you were traveling and you were misgendered? Or I know it's different in other languages with the pronouns, but if you were misgendered or somebody used the wrong pronouns, say even in English, what's the best way to handle that?
So a couple of years ago, when I went on my leaving cert holiday, I suppose, we went to Albufeira in Portugal. And I hadn't started hormones at the time or anything like that. And for the most part, people thought I was just like a 15-year-old lad that was just after going on holidays without my mom and dad. But there was the odd few that kind of looking at me and they're like, and they were like, oh, hey girl, how you getting on? I'm like, I was just kind of like, I just went over and I just kind of said to them, I was like, I'm actually a guy. I was like, my name is Mark. My pronouns are he, him. And I was like, I'd appreciate it if you could give it a try. And to be honest, they were more so taken aback that I actually kind of went back to them and actually said, hey, look, this is how I prefer it, rather than just going, haha, okay, bye. Do you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, I would kind of nearly, the way I kind of go about it is nearly just kind of, if you just say it out straight, a lot of people are kind of more so taken aback that you actually had the courage to, you know, defend yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I'd kind of go about it more so than anything else.
Okay. And I suppose saying it to somebody who, as long as you don't think they're going to be a threat either, if you go up and go like, listen here, these are my pronouns. Noah, what was your opinion on that?
I'm that little a bit different in kind of my approach, and I know every trans person is totally different and has different relationships with their pronouns and things like that. But no, fortunately, I've not been misgendered in quite a while. I just don't get it anymore. But when I did, I had this kind of thing in my head that I'm in this country. If this stranger in this country misgenders me, I actually don't care. I probably will never see them again in my life. Now, that's a totally, that's the way I handle things. I know it can be extremely dysphoric for other people. It's like seriously bother other people, and righteously. But I have just, if I'm in a different country, I'm just like, I will never see you again. So, it doesn't matter to me. It could be a waiter or a bartender or the receptionist at the hotel. And I'm like, you know what? It's not really, I don't feel like having this big education session with someone that I'm never going to see again. So I didn't really, although it initially would bother you, it didn't bother me enough to have that conversation. And then what I have to understand as well is that it depends what country you're in. There's languages that are totally gendered, like Spanish. There's languages that are not gendered at all. And then you have countries where, like, you'd probably hear a lot of people from Brazil here, they use she pronouns anyway. Not all the time, but like a lot of my Brazilian friends would explain to me, like, oh, we mix up sometimes, like it's not on purpose, or we're not misgendering you. Like, actually, I was having this conversation with a Brazilian friend of mine today, and they were like, it's just the way we learn English. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I noticed that even now, looking at me now, an old colleague of mine was always like saying she or her about me in front of me. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he didn't even know I was trans. So, he didn't know at the time. So he was like, when I did explain, he was like, oh, it's just the way we learn English. Like, sometimes, like, I'll often use the wrong pronoun. It's just me making a mistake in my English. It's not me actually, doing it on purpose or making a mistake about your gender. And I was like, okay. So it's about understanding different languages, I think, as well.
Okay.
So you guys were talking about surgery earlier and have to between obviously Madrid and Poland. Like, what is it like to travel like abroad for surgery?
Honestly, I found it just so exciting. Like, at the same time, like, my girlfriend kind of did point out to me, because of COVID, she couldn't come with me. It was just me and my mom, and that was fine by me as well. But she did kind of make a good point in the sense that, like, as exciting as it was, I was like, yes, I'm going to a new place that I've never been to, and I'm getting my surgery finally. It's kind of shocking that I had to go abroad to get it done at the same time. Now, I'm not going to begrudge the fact that I got to spend nearly a month in such a beautiful city, but at the same time, there was days there where I was like, I'd love to be at home. But in total, like, I found the whole kind of experience of actually traveling abroad for the surgery, it was so nerve-wracking and so exciting. And then when I was actually in recovery over there, it was kind of strange, because when you're not feeling great and you kind of want your home comforts, and all I wanted now was a big cuddle from one of my dogs and stuff like that. And I was just like, it was so kind of strange. But the parts of the city that I did get to see in the short kind of area that I was able to go around was just so amazing. And, like, honestly, I would I would encourage other trans people to go and get their surgery abroad if they can, like, you know, in this current climate, because it's a great experience to get to see somewhere else at the same time. And I suppose, like, I'll always remember Madrid for that reason.
I guess when did I have mine? So I've had surgery abroad twice. So I got my top surgery in Poland in 2008, 19. I should know that. But I thought I was really excited. Going over and anticipating it all, and it's finally happening. And I was with my best pal who was with me. Then I had it done, and I wanted to be at home. I wanted to be recovering at home. I wanted to be around my friends and my family. And it was only after I got home, it was only a few months after I got home, did I realize just how traumatizing it actually was. When I thought back on how in Poland they only give you Nurofen for pain after a double mastectomy. You know, if you were somewhere else, you'd be getting morphine for days. Trying to get through that pain, then traveling so soon after surgery was really difficult. It was really, really hard. And then the second time I went, which was only two and a half months ago, I was actually going with a friend who was getting his as his carer, but it was the same surgeon. I pointed out something on my chest that was bothering me, and he said, I'll do that surgery while you're here. So he actually did that surgery on Friday morning, and we flew home like 3 hours later. I flew home with a 35 centimeter incision on my chest the same day that I had had surgery.
Oh my God.
And that was really difficult because we were flying same day. He couldn't put me under general anesthetics. So he said, I can do it with local. And I said, oh, okay, let's do it. So he did. And I have pictures of during the surgery. And had I known it was going to be as big as it was, I probably wouldn't have done that.
Okay.
But yeah, and I only realize now, you know, how wrong that is and how traumatic it actually was to have to rush from get up off a surgery table with the, you know, this 35 centimeter incision that went from my back around to the front of my chest, and have to fly. And I was looking after my friend still, who had had a complete double mastectomy only a week before. So I had to get him home safe. But between the two of us, we only had one arm, which was my left arm, because I couldn't lift my right and he couldn't lift either of his. So I kind of make this joke that my left arm got both of us home. And then we ended up testing positive for COVID 3 days after we got home. And I was extremely sick with COVID, and try coughing your lung up for 2 weeks after having chest surgery. It's not easy. So yeah, and that's what trans people face and experience.
My God, that is intense.
That's ridiculous.
Because I had been following along your journey on Twitter, and like I had COVID at Christmas as well, and like I still cough, and it takes my entire body. I can't imagine having like been just cut open, bloated from the airplane, and then get COVID on top of that. Like, whew, Jesus, that's a lot.
That's intense.
Yep.
I really feel for you, man. I really do.
Like
I can't even imagine.
it's so unfair. I think that the healthcare is not in this country, that you have to travel for it, and that after having surgery you have to hop in a plane seat. Like,
And like the thing that in all my talking and like trans friends and stuff like that, it's always been the case of surgery realistically is available abroad, and doing it privately is near impossible in Ireland. And it's kind of a ridiculous situation because we have such a large trans population here as well.
Well,
it's
we only have one top surgeon providing top surgery for transmasculine people in Ireland, but unfortunately she's private, and can cost between 9,000 and 12,000 euro. And recently VHI has stopped funding that with her.
wow.
So transmasculine people now have no option in Ireland, and we all have to go abroad unless you have 12 grand down the back of the couch, which I'm not sure most people have.
No.
And especially when trans people are disproportionately affected by unemployment too.
Yeah.
You know, so of course I'm going to pay 3,200 and get to Polish surgeon. Do you know what I mean? Instead
Yeah.
of like,
absolutely.
it cost me 6,500 for myself and my best friend to go to Poland. That included travel accommodation for both of us, food for both of us, my surgery, my meds, everything. And I'd pay double that just for the surgery here.
Yeah. That's an incredible
It's-
cost.
Yeah, it's insane. So, like, overall, do you guys have any advice for someone who is considering traveling abroad for surgery?
Bit of advice would be to definitely go with somebody that you really, really trust, like a really good friend or a partner, or like I went with my mom, because when you're in that vulnerable state, like if I had gone with, say, somebody that, like, I've been talking to a few people on Facebook groups, like other trans people, and although they would understand my experience and stuff, you really want somebody there that you really do feel so comfortable around. Like, my mom had to literally do everything for me for the first week, and when I say everything, I mean everything, because I just wanted to make sure that I was healing well. And like, there's some people that you mightn't be too comfortable around with that sort of stuff. So I'd say definitely, if you're traveling abroad for surgery, definitely make sure that you 100% trust that person that's going with you.
I would completely agree. I went with one of my best pals, Will, and he's someone that I would literally, I would trust him with my entire life. So, go with someone who you're comfortable with helping you in and out of a bath, or someone you're comfortable with to say, oh my God, my bells are so bad I can't poo. Do you know what I mean? Like someone that you can actually express things like that, because painkillers happen and things like that do happen. Another thing I'd say is really research your surgeon. Just because some people have good experiences with a surgeon does not mean that that surgeon's technique suits your body. So we're often finding, say, surgeons who have a really good reputation, but most of their surgeries were performed on small chested guys, and then you have bigger guys going over and not being happy with their results. So it's really researching the results from previous results from your surgeon on similar body types to you. You don't want to have to go a second time. Things like, and that is not what happened in my case, by the way. Something totally different happened in my case. But it's and also what I'd say is really look after you and your carer's mental health when you are there, because I am telling you, not just for you, but for the person who's going with you, because myself and Will had very honest conversations about this. We had our first ever argument when we were in Poland. And I think it was because I was in pain. He was sick of hearing that I was in pain. He was away from his friends and isolated, just waiting on me hand and foot. I was irritated because I wasn't at home, and the two of us have since spoken about it, that, we both said, like, we were fucking sick of each other. And it was not because we didn't love each other, we do, but it was because we were in this intense environment by ourselves, and both of us had this huge, like, responsibility on us. So it's making sure, checking in with your care. If you're comfortable to stay in by yourself in a bed for 2 hours, tell them to go out and have a walk or go get a drink in a bar. Just kind of little things like that. Have your checklist, have your things ready, your button-up shirts. You won't be able to put a t-shirt over your head, I can guarantee you that, for a few days. And take your own painkillers with you. So I knew that in Poland they only prescribed Nurofen, so I went to my GP before I left and I got strong painkillers, so I took them instead. Just little kind of tips and tricks like that.
One huge thing that really did help me after surgery, that I think every trans guy should get if they're getting a double mastectomy, is, those bottles that have a straw going straight down, so you literally just hold it and you can just lift off the top, and just saved my life. Absolutely. Like 5 of them.
I did that too, and now I use that bottle to water my plants in the house.
Oh, wait, can I ask, because I know, Mark, you had said you were over there for like nearly a month. When you went over the first time, Noah, how long were you actually in Poland for?
So the literature that the doctor sends says that you need to be there for 3 weeks. Okay. You do not. When I met my surgeon, he said, as long as you come to my 1 week post-op appointment, I'm happy for you to fly home. And if I had gone by the literature I was sent, now that was written years ago, or probably to be extremely safe or whatever, my surgeon said to me, no, like, if come see me 1 week after, I'll take out your stitches and you can fly home. So there's no point in spending the money for like 3 weeks staying there if you don't need to. So I'd suggest like, so I only stayed, I set it up so that everything went bang, bang, bang. So I arrived, I think, on a Sunday. My consultation was on Monday, surgery was on Tuesday. Then I stayed 7 days, no, 8 days, saw my consultant and flew home later that evening after the 1 week post-op appointment. So I think I was there for the first time like 11 days or something in total. And I arrived 2 days before my surgery. So, you know, it's important to say to your surgeon, look, at what point is the earliest that I can fly home? Because if you want to and you're fitting well enough to, it's I find it easier to recover at home, and also you're not spending money on accommodation and food and stuff when you don't need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's nearly like the comfort of your own bed is also, I mean, that helps for even your mental health. You know, you're not in a hotel room or, you know, an Airbnb somewhere you're not familiar with. I know I'd asked Mark
Yeah.
actually shortly after your surgery, just out of my own curiosity, but I would like to ask again, just on this call, when you come home, is there care for you?
So I've heard from other people that it can kind of vary from surgeon to surgeon, but in my own experience, Dr. Lego was very good in the sense of like he was constantly on WhatsApp back and forth to me, even when I was in Madrid. Any little thing that I might have had an issue with, like there was a small bit of like seeping on my bandage, and I was like, uh-oh, and I sent it to him straight away, and he told me nothing to worry about, you're all good. So I was lucky enough in the sense that he had told me that I could contact him at any point. And what he would do for me is we would go on a WhatsApp call and he would have a look and see as much as he could over video. And then he would basically give me all the instructions to then bring to my GP and let them do what they need to do, or else they can refer me to a hospital if needs be. So that would be kind of like the most care that I would have gotten from my surgeon. Now, I've heard from other people that maybe other surgeons mightn't be as hands-on, but for the most part, yeah, it would just be, he would give you the information that he can tell from a call, and then I would pass that on to a GP or another healthcare professional.
And Noah, even for yourself, like when you came home, was there care for you, or were you the same where you were kind of in contact with your surgeon in Poland?
There was no care for us, for me. Sorry, I keep saying us because I went with Fionn
Yeah.
3 months ago, and it was the same story. So
Yeah,
the first time I went, same as Mark, my surgeon, Dr. Lembas in Warsaw, was, you know, anything I needed post-surgery, I could text him, I could call him, I could email him, and he would answer pretty much immediately, even right up to like 11:30, 12 at night, which was bizarre. He still
Yeah.
emails me at that time. It must be his time that he just sits down and does emails.
Yeah.
But even, you know, he would be always really happy to help where he could. So unfortunately, when we got home from Ireland, I had a problem where I had developed a hematoma. So it's like a buildup of blood in your, just a little pocket of blood that's built up, and that needs to be drained. And when I went to the hospital, they were like, oh, ooh, trans surgery, we don't know what to do. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the same kind of thing that any person, if they got a hematoma, it's the same treatment. You stick a needle in, you draw it out. That's all you do. It's not a trans hematoma. It's just a hematoma. The same ones that you would treat every day for every other person that comes in here after surgery, you know. And that was a big fight even to get that done. Like I had to really argue them. And then when myself and Fionn came back a few months ago, which is how we found out we had COVID, Fionn had what's called a seroma, which is a buildup of fluid. And he had it in Poland and got it drained the day we left, just before I had my surgery. And God, the two of us sound like absolute disasters. But then we got back and Fionn was very sick. We had to isolate together because we had traveled. So he was staying in my apartment with me. And there was one day he was on the couch and he was just hardly coherent. He was asleep and he was sleeping a lot. When he wasn't asleep, he wasn't really making very much sense. He was very lethargic. And I said, this is an infection or something. I said, it has to be. You know, his temperature was high. So I said, we need to go to A&E. So we went to A&E and they said, we explained, look, he's had surgery in Poland. he's got a seroma. We've been in touch with the surgeon. He told us to come straight here. And they were like, well, no, you went abroad for private surgery. You're not entitled to care. And I just went full Karen on them, on the nurse. I was like, excuse me. I said, the emergency department in Ireland in any public hospital is available for any person in Ireland who's experiencing a medical emergency, despite how it happened or where they got it. I said, and I actually just went to town on them. And then they kind of started kind of saying, oh, well, why did you have a double mastectomy? Because like you're a guy, to Fionn. And Fionn was like trying to whisper that he was trans because like it was a waiting room full of people behind us and things like that. And it was just a really uncomfortable experience. And even when he got in there, I couldn't go in because of COVID, obviously, but even when he got through, they were refusing to treat him. They were treating him really badly. They were saying that he needs to be referred to a breast clinic, and then it was another clinic, and all this kind of stuff. And with the routine COVID test that everyone going into A&E has to get, he learned that night that he was COVID positive. He called me. I was waiting for him back at my apartment, and he said, I've got COVID. And I went, right. And that was this moment for me where I was kind of going, I did get tested the following day and I did have it. So it would mean that I did have it alongside of him. But then this was like a 2-week saga that he could not get. Like, he asked the GP to drain it. The GP was like, I don't know how to do that. He ended up going to an A&E in a different hospital, who were saying, oh, we have to call like a surgeon in another hospital who's experienced with trans people. And Fionn was sitting there just saying, this is a seroma. They're so common. You treat them all the time. It doesn't matter that I'm trans.
Yeah.
You know, if I had a broken ankle, it wouldn't be a trans broken ankle. It would just be a broken ankle. You know what I mean? So it's really, really hard to get aftercare if you do suffer any complications at home. My GP, he's wonderful. He's great. And, Fiona since moved to my GP, but he took out the 1 or 2 stitches that I still needed taken out, and most of them were internal. So, luckily he can do things like that. But if it was anything more complex, he'd send me to A&E, and A&E would tell me what they told me twice before: we can't help you.
My God, 2 weeks, like.
Joke.
Yeah, and whatever ended up happening was, because they left it so long, Fionn's seroma, what happens with that fluid is it hardens and you can no longer drain it.
Yeah.
So you have to live with this pain while you're waiting for that seroma to absorb into your tissue. Yeah. So it just means he has to wait.
Jesus, like.
In pain until that fully absorbs.
I mean, you're 100% right in saying, like, if you went in with a broken ankle or a broken arm, or you cracked your head open, it's like, oh, well, you're a trans person, we can't treat you. It's, you cracked your head open. Our heads are all the same. It's not.
Yeah. What I forgot to mention was that the only reason Fionn finally got seen and treated properly was because we emailed the surgeon to say, no doctors will do this, what will we do? And the surgeon emailed back saying, okay, you need to get an X-gauge needle, you need to get a large syringe, get your friends to put it, like me, to put it into your chest at such an angle, blah, 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 pull out the fluid. And I said, okay, show the doctor that when you get into the hospital, and tell the doctor that if you do not get treatment here, that's what you're going to do, because that's what your surgeon told you to do. And of course that makes them liable then, so they jump and say, oh, and that's the only way he got sorted.
Oh my God.
Yep, because our surgeon told us to do it ourselves at home.
Jesus. Is there anything that could be done? The biggest question I think we've been asking a lot of people is, like, many people's advice is how you can conform to the world, but have you any suggestions as to what ways the world could, conform to you in a way? Like, is there anything, say, like for the airport, planning your trips, your accommodation, your activities, the actual transport itself? Is there anything that would help a trans person in that regard? Yeah,
I'd say education is number one. I think there's an onus on airport staff to be educated. I think there's an onus on, for example, Dublin Airport to call in places like Tenny to do training in Trans 101 kind of thing, such as my job includes giving trans training, that's not what it's called, by the way. It's like a trans
Bootcamp.
101. To do trainings for hospital staff. Like, that's part of my job. We
Okay.
do education sessions for prisons and you name it. So I think the onus is on places like airports and that to have that training when, for example, what people don't think about is trans people's passports might not reflect what they look like in person now. If they don't have access to gender recognition in their country, if they don't have the money to do it yet. So, I was traveling looking like this for a long time. Well, no facial hair, not the facial hair I have now, short hair and everything, but my passport picture was of a woman with long blonde hair and makeup and plucked eyebrows. And, the amount of times like people were like, and I just had to go, I just got a haircut or something like that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's, instead of that person it's like questioning that, if they're educated that, trans people exist and sometimes their documents aren't going to look exactly like they do, or they're going to go by a different name. It's also educating about, going through body scanners. So if I were to go through one of those, those swoosh body scan, I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
I
They
got the
kind of
swoosh
go
swoosh
around
ones.
you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. When I step into one of those, the person operating it automatically clicks the male option because that's what they see getting into it. And what always
Okay.
happens then is this bing, 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 and there's an I can never say this word, anomaly. There's always an anomaly with the body they chose because they see the genital. Well, they can't actually see your genitals, but it picks up what you do and don't have. So it just basically does like this red mark over your pelvic area to say there's something not right in this image. And then you have to explain, oh, well, actually I'm trans. And, obviously it depends on if you've had surgery or not, but, there's lots of different things. I was asked one time before my surgery when I was binding, why I was wearing a hard plated vest, like, which of course in an airport, when someone asks why you're wearing, a thick vest, you're thinking, oh my God, they think I'm a bomber, that kind of thing. And you have to get out and explain, actually, it's just a binder. I'm a trans, so education, I think, is number one. And I think from education, that's where, people could make the lives or the travel for trans people much easier.
Yeah, I definitely agree with education. Times when I've been going back and forth to like England and stuff like that, say I'd be taking off my jumper at the, going to security a couple of times, my binder has been like kind of shown or whatever. And I literally, the men were standing there, to give me the pat down after I walked through the thing. And literally they just switched and the girl was standing there waiting to pat me down when I got to the other side of it. And I was like, man, like, I know you're not going to be feeling my bits. So does it really matter if it's a woman or a man that's going to be, instead of making the point of, oh, he's a guy, so I'm going to get one of the lads to pat him down when he comes out and, oh, I can see boobs there. So he's obviously a girl. Like, no, it just, that sort of stuff was always a very annoying thing about, say, like security and stuff, or I was always terrified. Like, I do like to wear my packer as, like just to kind of have a bulge, just makes me feel.
That was actually my next question. Yeah.
So I'm always terrified that I'm going, like, I'm afraid to put it into my bag first because I think it was in Love Hate that or something like that, where somebody was smuggling a load of drugs in a dildo and they open up the bag and they're like, oh, it's a dildo, and then all of a sudden, it was drugs. So I was like, oh my God, they're going to think I'm smuggling drugs here, so I better wear it. And then all of a sudden then they're like, wait a minute, what's that in his pants? And it's just that whole thing of like panicking as you're walking up, being like, are they going to think I'm smuggling drugs, or are they going to think like I'm concealing a weapon? Like, it's just, yeah.
It's actually,
okay,
I don't know if this is unusual or not, but I actually quite like in airports watching them squirm when they do pick up on something. Of course, if it's somewhere safe, like, in Ireland, I kind of enjoy it a little bit because, trans people have been that kind of butt of the joke from the beginning, in film and TV and things like that. And I really kind of oddly take some sort of pleasure in when they ask you something like, if you don't look like your passport photo, and I always look deadpan into their eyes and say, I'm trans. And then you see this like internal panic and they're like, yep, that's fine, go ahead. And I'm like, I could actually be a terrorist and just say I'm trans, and I would get through every single security check by saying I'm trans, just because they're so uncomfortable. talking about it.
Some man from the Midlands just doesn't want to deal with that situation.
No, exactly.
Go on.
It was like it was so funny. Like when I did once, I am always that person that's randomly put through the swish machine, and I'm always that person who's randomly swabbed on their hands and shoes and stuff like that.
Same here. Yeah.
Always that one. And you know, the last time I was put through that machine, and the little beep 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 came up, and he was like trying to like really carefully say that there was, you know, something in the pelvic area, and I was like, yes, I'm transgender. And again, he was like, so, but we still have to who do you want to and I was like, you know, just letting him squirm when I could easily have said, you know, I'm a trans guy, a guy is fine, whatever, don't care, you know. But I kind of enjoy it because for so long we're the ones that are made feel uncomfortable all the time.
Yeah.
And for once,
absolutely.
my very existence is just making someone feel a little bit uncomfortable. And maybe that's not fair of me, but I do.
There's some sense of power that comes with it, though. I kind of get what you mean in certain contexts. I do like when I'm like, yeah, I am trans. And yeah, do feel a bit bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Squirm.
Continue your story. Like, what else were you going to say that was offensive to me? I'm standing right here.
So Roma's famous question, she asks us at the end of every single video. So, like, guys, after the lockdown, where is the first place you guys want to travel?
As I said earlier on, the number one place on my list is Canada. I cannot wait to go. I'm not a big fan of too much sun, too much heat and stuff like that. Give me a load of snow and mountains and forests and I will be happy.
I guess I'm the opposite to Mark. I'm what I call a sun leech. I absolutely, like, the second the sun comes out, I am out there sitting in it for as long as I can. Don't care how hot it is. I lived in Darwin for a few months where it was 43 degrees most days, you know, which is actually very hot, but still.
Yeah.
But I guess the country I'd go to first is not necessarily like a country that's on my bucket list because I've already been there. But I think I would go to New Zealand because New Zealand's a place that I would normally go every second year to see all my family out there, travel the country. It's an amazing, amazing country. Gorgeous, beautiful as well. So I think because I missed my trip last year because of COVID, I'm now 3 years since I've been there, which is the longest I've ever gone. So I think I would take that trip over to New Zealand and do a little stop off in Australia to see my other family on the way back. But I think a country I haven't been to that I really still want to go to is Fiji.
Okay. That's probably the most furthest place that anybody so far has said.
So Mark, Noah, thank you so much for coming on Oceans for the interviews. It's been lovely talking to you guys. I really hope this will help someone who is trans, who is a little bit nervous about traveling, either just for holidays or for possibly going for surgery. I hope this helps out someone. I really appreciate the two of you guys coming on and talking about it and being so open about it as well, which is brilliant. Thank you so much. If you want to keep up to date with the videos, you can subscribe to us. We have a little bell. You can like, comment where you want to travel next. And thank you guys for watching.